On the battlefields of World War II, there were weapons that killed, and there were weapons that broke the spirit before the first shot was ever fired. When German soldiers heard that deep, heavy sound, almost like a constant thunder tearing through the air, they knew something was wrong. It was not a common rifle. It was not a light machine gun. It was a low, metallic roar that seemed to vibrate inside the chest. Many did not even know exactly what it was, but everyone understood what it meant. Mass death, no warning, no safe shelter. The Browning .50 caliber machine gun did not merely fire projectiles, it fired fear. For many Nazi soldiers, their first encounter with the .50 was psychological. The sound came before the bullets, and the sound alone was enough to stop an advance. There were reports of entire units instinctively throwing themselves to the ground, even without knowing where the fire was coming from. The noise was unlike anything they had ever heard. While rifles cracked and lighter machine guns stitched the air, the Browning seemed to hammer the battlefield itself. Each shot sounded as if the world was being struck by a blow of steel. Then came the bullets. They did not ricochet like smaller calibers, they punched through. They tore through sandbags, tree trunks, improvised walls, light vehicles, and anything soldiers believed would protect them. Many Germans learned too late that the cover which had saved them dozens of times against other weapons simply did not work against the .50. Where there had once been safety, there were now splinters, dust, and bodies. Rumors spread quickly. Stories traveled from trench to trench, from unit to unit. They said the Browning cut men in half. They said a single burst could wipe out an entire squad. They said it did not matter how deep you dug or how thick your cover was. If the .50 was aimed at you, your fate was already sealed. Many of these stories were exaggerated, but on the battlefield, that did not matter. Fear did not need to be precise, it only needed to be convincing. In several engagements, German troops believed they were under attack by anti-tank guns. The violence of the impact, the force with which the rounds struck the ground and obstacles all pointed to the same terrifying conclusion. This could not be just a machine gun. When the truth became clear, it was even more frightening. If a simple machine gun could do all this, what else were the Americans hiding? The Browning .50 did not dominate only the ground, it ruled the low skies as well. German pilots learned, often in the most brutal way possible, that flying too low over American positions was a fatal mistake. The same weapon that slaughtered infantry could rip through aircraft fuselages, destroy engines, and bring planes down in flames. A well-placed burst could turn an air attack into a fireball. For those in the air, the sight of American positions equipped with the .50 was a clear warning: do not come closer. On the ground, the presence of a single well-positioned Browning was enough to change an entire German battle plan. Whole units preferred to take long detours, cross dangerous terrain, or wait hours for reinforcements rather than attempt a frontal assault. The weapon did not just defend a position, it controlled the surrounding space. Wherever the .50 was aimed, the battlefield simply no longer belonged to the enemy. The psychological impact was as powerful as the physical damage. Even when the machine gun was silent, its presence could be felt. German soldiers reported a constant sense of threat, as if at any moment that sound could return. Many found themselves pinned to the ground, unable to advance or retreat, waiting for something they knew was coming. Prolonged fear eroded morale, exhausted the mind, and turned trained soldiers into paralyzed men. Meanwhile, American gunners trusted the weapon as if it were an extension of their own bodies. The Browning had a reputation for never failing. Mud, dust, rain, extreme cold, nothing seemed to stop it. In a war where weapons jammed, broke, and demanded constant maintenance, the .50 kept firing. To the Germans, it felt like an endless weapon, backed by an industrial capacity they simply could not match. There were attempts to respond. Germany developed powerful weapons, some of them technically impressive, but none achieved the same balance of power, range, reliability, and versatility. While German weapons were often too complex for real battlefield conditions, the Browning remained brutally simple in its purpose: fire and keep firing. Every second it stayed operational reinforced the enemy's sense of inferiority. Over time, the machine gun became more than just a tool of war, it became a symbol. To German soldiers, it represented the overwhelming power of the United States. Not just the weapon itself, but what it stood for: mass production, constant replacement, endless ammunition. Even if one was destroyed, another would appear. Even if one position fell, another Browning would be waiting farther ahead. Many German veterans later stated that the Browning .50 was one of the most demoralizing weapons they faced, not because it was unseen, but because it was impossible to ignore. It announced itself with violence, demanded respect through terror, and dominated combat through raw force. In a war where morale mattered as much as bullets, that made all the difference. When the war ended, many weapons were retired, forgotten, or replaced, but the Browning M2 remained. Decade after decade, conflict after conflict, it stayed in service. For many historians, that alone proves its effectiveness. For those who faced it from the wrong side of the barrel during World War II, its longevity only confirms what they knew from the very first burst. The Browning .50 was not just a machine gun, it was a warning, a constant reminder that once it began to fire, the battlefield changed hands. And for the Nazi soldiers who heard its sound echo through ruins, forests, and trenches, that weapon did not merely represent enemy fire, it represented the end of hope, the end of advancing, resisting, or winning.